Hey, welcome back to CarMiZa. This is the Trunk Details Part 3. Today is June 9th, 2023. All right, next thing I'm working on, this is obviously, again, the distribution block, the caps, all that. All this seems pretty solid, but there's nothing holding the caps right now. If for some reason something ever came loose here and failed, I'd have a couple of large caps rolling around, so I want to do something about it. So right now I'm just mocking up a piece of backstrap here, and I'm going to transfer this to some 3/4 inch steel stock and see if I can bend it and make some brackets. All right, first thing I did was cut a piece of stock long enough. I took a piece of string and ran it around this piece just to get a rough idea. It's 16 inches. This is 17 and a half, so I've got a little play. And if you notice too, right here, I'm not going to be able to drill into there. I can't put this thing in the drill press once it's this shape to be able to drill this hole. So on my real piece, I've already done it. So now I'll use this is going to be where I'm going to start my bend and work up from there. So let's see how it goes. I do have some map gas because this is 1/8 inch and it's going to be kind of tough to bend. So we'll see how it goes. All right, here's what I got so far. Now I need to bend this, which is going to wrap around the cap. I'm going to use this piece of 3-inch pipe, some MAP gas, heat up the steel, and see if I can bend it around. Let's see how it goes. All right, I tried this out of, I think that's 3/4 inch steel. I was able to make it, but I don't really like it. It's not perfectly capturing the different curves I needed, and it's really tough to work with, so I'm going to do it out of aluminum instead. Let's see how it goes. All right, tried that piece out of aluminum. That didn't work. The problem is that this is not going to work as a proper template, so I've got to kind of step things up. So here's what I'm doing. Double-sided a piece of this cardstock to the caps. You can see where I've drawn the outline there. I will then take this piece off, cut it, trim it, and get a proper cardboard kind of a template, and then I'll transfer that to MDF, cut it out of MDF, and then I'm going to build a jig to be able to bend the metal. Let's see how it goes. All right, I have now transferred that cardboard template onto just a piece of scrap MDF, and as you can see, I've got a reference point here, and I think that looks pretty good. That captures the exact shape of what I'm looking for with this bracket. So now I'm going to clamp this to another piece of stock and build the jig to be able to bend the metal and see how that goes. All right, progress check on this new concept to bend. This is where things usually go sideways, but so far so good. You can see I'm really good here. As I mentioned on my last attempt, I've already did the countersink on this because now I can't, I couldn't get a countersink in there after doing that bend. And what I'm figuring out right here is if I clamp this and this, I'm just kind of dry running this. I'll take this out, the clamps off, heat up this area really good, put the clamps back in, grab this, and just wrap this around this to capture that radius. And then I'll be able to go obviously to about here or so. I'll stop there and then reposition my clamps and continue to work. I think this interior bend is going to be one of the harder parts, especially to try to, get a really nice clean transition. Once I'm past there, this will be easy, and then that's just straight. So it's a piece of cake. And then I'll put another bend at the bottom, and that should be good. Once I get one built, if I can get it to really come out the way I want, the real challenge is going to be to duplicate a second one, but that's the purpose of the jig, to replicate, the same exact thing. So let's see how it goes, and I'll check in shortly. All right, getting closer. I came up with a cool little trick. As you can see, I use this clamp and a 9/16 socket to bend this in, and I'm basically pulling these two pieces in, make sure this doesn't get distorted, and I try to capture that radius. So far, everything's good there. Now I just got to put a bend on this piece, and I'm going to leave this length here just a little long, and then I'll use this basically the scrap piece that I'll trim off to hold it in the drill press to do that drill in countersink. Otherwise, if I trim this, I've got nothing to hold on to. So let's see how that goes. All right, victory is mine so far. That's kind of the look that I was going for. hell of a lot harder than what I thought it was going to be, but got a little bit of tweaking to do still. And then as you can see, I've got this mark to cut and to drill. I'll get that set, and I'll run a square against this edge to make sure that this piece is going straight. And then I can drill the wood and put in my T-nuts. And then now I got to do the other one as well, which with the jig, it shouldn't be that bad. I actually screwed up. I didn't show it, but I was all the way to this point. I went to make this bend and I was off a little bit, so it wasn't, you can see right now it's sitting real nice. It was not, so I scrapped it and started over. But to get to this point was pretty quick. Notice too, I've got some scratch marks from the vise or the clamps that I was using, things like that. I can sand those out. I'm gonna kind of round this edge a little bit before it gets gold plated. But definitely that's the vision I had. That's kind of what I was looking for, so I'm happy with it. I'll update you as soon as I get a little further on it. All right, real quick, this is what I was talking about when I said I'll leave this extra meat on here, and that's going to give me something to clamp to. I can use my fence. Now I can drill the hole, and then I'll be able to countersink, and then when that's all done, then I'll trim off this piece. All right, checking in on these cap brackets. So these came out pretty good, which is why I built new ones. I was able to do something better. I started from scratch. I used that same jig that you saw in the earlier videos. I made sure I didn't bang it with a hammer at all. I was able to get a little bit more heat into them and get my transitions a little bit smoother. Also, if you notice this, when this comes down, it's not perfectly straight, and I did that on purpose. My objective here was to make it kind of flow, kind of like the muffler adapter does on the 845 display tube, which will be sitting right there. So once again, I've got stainless hardware here, T-nuts, and these same flathead screws. These I may round over. I'm gonna figure that out. If I do, I'll keep it consistent and round over everything very carefully, maybe even Henry stuff. I don't really like the way, I feel like it's not really terribly finished off there. On the side, you can see really nice. And I'm sure if I used a proper machine to be able to bend the metal, maybe I could get it even more accurate. But this is just a safety precaution. The caps, for close to 30 years, just had these bolts holding them in, and that was it. This is just to ensure that, again, if these were to come loose, these bolts, the caps don't go floating around and damage things or, catch a fire. This is pretty cool too. If you notice, a little kind of made like a shelf effectively, so that'll hold it in place, and that's what it looks like from the back side. So these are done. Again, minus some just little tweaks here and there. I might be able to get the bends even a little bit tighter. I got like a little tiny gap there. It's tough. Once I push one side down, another side pops up. So, but again, I'm very happy with it. I think once again that kind of meets my vision as far as what I was looking for. So from here, I'm going to start working on. I've got a few miscellaneous items to do, and then I'm going to start working on the holes for all of the wiring in the amp rack. So that'll be coming up. All right, I mentioned in the last segment when we finished up the cap brackets that I had some miscellaneous items to do. The majority of the miscellaneous items is going to be getting the wiring holes laid out and prepped. I might just do just a pilot hole. And then again, this piece of stock is just a template that I will use to transfer to a piece of 1/4-inch stock that I'll give to my father, and he'll do the final piece out of birch plywood and the veneer. But as you can see here, this is going to be the power cord for the inverter, power and ground for the inverter, the chassis ground for the inverter, and then this is pretty cool. This is the way, exactly obviously the way Earl had it set up. So the power wire comes out and kind of wraps down, and so it's got a little loop in it here, and then it drops into the floor here, and then my ground goes here. I popped in just one of the chassis for the Milberts just to make sure that I'm not going to be too close to my other wires. The speaker wires that I'm using, I'm reusing the old straight wire Maestro, which is a little over a 1/2 inch, almost, it's between 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch thick. So I need to make sure when I drill those holes, which will go along this line here, this little light construction line you can see, that it's not going to be too close to this. So that'll be it. I'll keep moving on and we'll get these holes prepped. Okay, at this point I have everything laid out for, this is going to be for the inverter, the main power, the main ground, the grounds coming off of the 8-gauge grounds coming off the distribution block that hangs up here. And then these are going to be the 8 gauges that come off of and kind of bend around the fuse box, the distribution block. So what I'm doing here is I cut some pieces of just flat bar steel. I'm going to take these, use my fence once again in the drill press, and I'll drill, for the holes I've decided to do 16th inch pilot holes just to be a little bit more precise for when my dad uses the Forstner bit. So now what I'll do is lay out this, basically these dimensions onto this, but put it in the vise, or put it in the drill press with the fence, and then that's going to give me my pilot holes. Then I'll take this, I'll mark center on each end, and then I'll double side tape it to the piece of wood here, and then I'll be able to drill in. My drill press isn't deep enough to be able to get these up here, so I figure this will be good. I think this will be good, and it's mainly just visually making sure this stuff lines up, I think is going to look best. So we'll do the same thing here and here. So let's get going. All right, got my fence set up. One other thing I did here, the fact, whether or not the holes are centered in here is not that critical. It's more critical that they're in a straight line, which is again what the fence is for. But because I'm a little bit particular, I did a couple of test holes here. It's kind of tough to do with one hand, but if I was to pull the drill press down and go to the center of that hole, the drill goes right in perfectly. If I flip it over and do the same thing, it goes in perfectly. Therefore, I know that the hole is centered on this piece. Okay, at this point I have the metal pieces as basically my jig, and you can see if I hold this to this edge, it will line up with these lines. I also did a 1/4 of an inch in. I did a center hole here, which I'll help to use as a reference to line up here and here, and then I'm going to double side tape this piece down. And then again, the only 2 holes, these 2 I can use the drill press for. The rest of them I have to do freehand. But that's why I wanted to do a jig, and I'm only going 1/16 of an inch, so there's not a lot of variant. You can see I've got this one ready to go. That again is for the ground wires. And this is going to be for the power wires coming off the fuse block. So I'm going to go ahead and double side tape these, get all these drilled, and then check back in. And then if all of that goes as planned, I'll do the same thing for the millverts. And again, you can see I've got the construction line here. I'll double check, verify those. And I should be able to temporarily mount the barrier strips, and then also get a reference. I got to figure out which of these is RCA and all of that. So I'll lay that out and we'll get it going. All right, just wanted to stop and show this part. I cleaned the steel and blew off any dust off the MDF. I used just some isopropyl to clean the steel really good, make sure it's degreased. Double side taped everything down, and then took a square, and ensured, even though I've got the lines laid out, I want to make sure this is good. So if this is square, and I know I've done these in the jig, or created a jig basically up against the fence, I think it stands to reason that these will be square and in a straight line. That's the goal here. And then I've got these set up again for the ground wires, and these for the power coming off the distro. So I'll go ahead and get these drilled and then onto the millvert wires. Okay, before I go on to the millverts, just want to show those are in a line. That's kind of, again, the goal right here, right? Everything's in a good straight line, and I just set the inverter here, and you can see again, this is going to be where the power wires come. And if you look down there, everything is in a really nice straight line. So now definitely onto the millverts. Okay, got the millverts laid out. Here's what I did. Attach the barrier strips on the millverts. They're actually backwards because normally the wires run through here. Don't worry about these wires, we're all getting redone, but I just wanted these replacement. Speaker wire, power ground remote, RCAs, and speaker wire. The speaker wire I'm using is positive and negative come through together. It's really big stuff, straight wire Maestro. So we'll see that in some upcoming videos. So from here, I basically ran a square here to capture the edge, mark that, and came 3/4 out from there. Now it's parallel with the amp. And then I took a square and kind of ran it like that and made all my marks. So now I've got both amps laid out. So now at this point, I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did with the, with these holes that I just did. These new holes here will be 1/16 of an inch as well, just pilot holes. But I'll get a piece of stock, cut it, and get working on that. Okay, got my stock laid out. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do both amps at the same time, or if I was just going to build one template and then move it. But I decided to do two, and I double side taped them together. Now I'm going to clamp these, put them in the drill press, once again using my fence, and then drill through. This ensures that not only are the lines straight, but they're going to be exactly symmetrical. You're probably sick of hearing me use that word by now, but I am a nut about things matching. So again, I'll reiterate, I'm sure there's a more precise way, but for the tools I've got and everything I'm working with, this is the best that I can do, but it should come out really good. All right, let's get this prepped. Okay, I just want to point out one thing. I'm using a 1/16 inch cobalt drill bit, going really, really slow, and I'm also spraying with WD-40 every single time and vacuuming out all the debris just to make sure it doesn't get up against the fence and cause an inaccuracy on how this is pushed up. So just a little detail I wanted to show. All right, I don't know if you can see those lines, which is fine, but you can see obviously all the holes on these two pieces. My fingers out of the way, line up perfectly. Okay, got all this drilled. Don't mind the fan noise in the background. It's 106 degrees right now. It's starting to warm up a little bit here in Arizona. So got the fan going, and still, despite that, it's really hot in the garage. So as you can see, everything came out really good. Now I'll remove the jigs, clean up the double-sided tape. I'm gonna hit the rest of this with a little bit of 60 grit. You can see it's just from my hands and everything because I've been working on this dang piece so long. But I think there is one other hole I'm going to drill. I've decided I'm going to do an analog voltmeter, kind of a vintage looking analog voltmeter right here, which is going to sit kind of in front of the fuse distribution block. So I'll prep. I don't have the piece yet. I got to get it ordered. I found a really cool one that I like. Earl likes it as well, so I think I'm going to go with that. So I'll get that prepped. I'm just going to drill a pilot for the hole that needs to be cut for that. So we'll get on that now. Okay. No, I'm not putting the interior in yet. I just wanted to pop the back seat in. Wanted to make sure nothing is getting blocked off when I do this with this. So this is... Obviously, it's just kind of sitting there now, but that's what that normally would look like. And then when people want to see inside the trunk, just like Earl had it, obviously that'll all be trimmed out, but that is where I'm going to put the voltage gauge. I think that's going to look perfect. There's a couple different sizes. That's the smaller size, 2 1/8. I think that's going to be perfect. Again, it's a really nice high-end piece that is, it's going to have a gold bezel, which will match everything once all the gold is replated. But that'll look great. And I think if you notice, you can just barely still see the street wires caps. You'll see the strap, at least one of them that I built, and won't see the other one, but that's okay. One cool thing, when all of this is in here, the backs of the millbirds are just flat aluminum after I make them. There's none on there now. And that will all be gold plated to like a mirror finish. So you'll actually be able to see a ton of reflections of all the work against the on the millbirds themselves. It'll act like a big mirror. So that should be cool. Keep the progress going here. Okay, I think I'm done with drilling holes. There's a lot of holes. So once again, just as a reminder, this is a template that I will use to transfer to a piece of 1/4-inch MDF. The 1/4-inch MDF I will send to my father. So I first needed to lay everything out, make sure everything fit, lined everything up, all of that. So now what I'll do at this point is I will put everything on there and shoot another quick video just to show what everything looks like on there. And then the last part will be the same piece in the car. And I'm actually going to throw in the light and power that up and see how things look. Alrighty, bit of a milestone here. That's what it's going to look like from the back side. And if you notice, you can see where the power and ground come off the inverter. I got everything laid out. This 1/0, it's going to come down here and loop in. This ground 1/0, it's going to go there. Here's all the Milbert holes. You can see those on both sides. All prepped. This is pretty cool too. The 8-gauge will come in here. Henry built this really cool little distro. Kind of a wire management. He also had the wires going down here, but that was on the original install. So I think I'm gonna fill these in, because I don't need those, but you'll see the wires will come in here and they'll curve. See if there's 4 holes there, and then they'll have the same radius, which will look really nice. That's where that voltage gauge is going to go, the analog voltage gauge from I forget the name of the company. It's really, really nice. It's like $225 for the gauge, so it's really well built. And you can see the light in there too. This also will be gold plated. That's the so it's basically a new LED light with a diachromatic lens, which is out of the the original lights that were in the car. I got to get more of those lights. If anybody knows where it's dichroic, excuse me. If anybody knows where to get dichroic 2-inch lenses, I need those bad. I cannot find them anywhere. I got to keep searching. Also, if anybody knows where to find street wires, I'm still looking for. I got the 8-gauge power, got enough of that. A really nice guy on old school, I think old school car audio was nice enough to hook me up with that, but I'm still looking for 8-gauge ground, 1/0, and I want 4-gauge to match. So the original street wires, not the translucent, but the solid jacket power and ground cable. I've got my hole here for the 110 going into the inverter. So basically that is everything from the back side, and then I'll go ahead and spin it around and show you what the front will look like. Okay, that's going to be the view from the front. Keep in mind, I still have to make I have it all bent, all the metal bent, but I think I'm going to braze it. The cage for the 845 display tube. And obviously when the boards are in, you won't see any of the back. There'll be covers on the back of the Milberts, which again will look like a mirror. So you'll see in just a second. I'm going to put the whole rack in the car, and then through that ski hole, it'll look amazing, especially with a lot of light in there. It's just going to really bounce around, and a lot of shadows and things like that. And then the power wire, RCA's, big giant Maestro speaker wire. It should look really cool. One thing that's neat too, I went quite a bit deeper with the rack. I think about 5 or 6 inches total compared to what Earl had. I wanted to pull these items right here further back, so when you'll see it in a minute, when it's inside of the car, you'll see more of the, like the caps and things like that. You'll see it a bit better through the ski hole. And I also wanted to see more of the Milberts when you kind of walk up on the car. Before, they were kind of tucked in a little bit, but keep in mind, back when Earl had the car, he was driving the car around for business. So this is the original piece out of the car, and I think I'm about 5 or 6 inches deeper total now. So for him, it worked out great because he could really slide the stuff in there. All the electronics were pushed back as far as possible, which gave him more trunk space for luggage and things that he needed when he was traveling. So for me, nothing's going in the car except for people that want to hear it. So all right, I'm gonna get it in the car and we'll see what it looks like from there. All right, decided to give myself a little treat and hook up the light. So That's kind of the glow that I was referring to, that I was after. I might do something. If I drop down there, you can really see that light, and it's bright as hell. I might put a little like half circle cover on it. Maybe braze that in because I think it might be brighter than I want, and I definitely don't want to be able to see the light. But the glow is really cool. I think that looks great. You can see in there, and again, you can totally see the Streetwires logos on the caps. It's again because I pushed everything out a little bit further. But yep, definitely looks the way Earl had it before. Very cool. Nice warm glow. Looks really good. Okay, here's what it looks like from the back. Keep in mind the light, the only LED light that's in there really won't do anything back here. I've got this little shop light, but there's going to be 3 of those same LED lights, or 4 I think I'm going to do along the back here, and that'll imagine it's like you held a flashlight under your chin and your face has all kinds of cool shadows. That's what happens here, and it really looks great. So, but again, you can see everything looks good. I've got the bolts in for the floor, everything lined up perfect. So from here, the next thing is I've got to take that piece of wood, transfer it to a piece of 1/4 inch. I use a flush trim bit on a router, and then I'm just going to do 1/16 of an inch holes for all the holes that I have. I'll label, I'm going to number the holes on the piece of wood, and then I'm going to give my father, I'm going to share him a Google sheet, and then I'll do an inventory of the holes, and you know, kind of have a columns and number of the hole, the depth, whether or not it's all the way through or not, and then that way he knows exactly what to drill. When he gets that done and back to me, again, that'll be in zebra wood. I'll be able to clear it and then get it into the car, and that piece should be done. But I'm talking so much time, guys. I think I'm over 200 hours so far in the trunk. Some of that was prepping for Dynamat, doing the Dynamat. You know, and again, I got a ton of Dynamat in there, but the majority of it was work. It was probably 125, 150 hours into making that piece of wood. But it included like the cap brackets. There's a lot that went on there, but check out that kind of like yellow glow. And when everything is gold plated, even the power inverter back there is going to be gold plated. That's really going to look sharp. So, all right, until the next video, I will talk to you soon, and thanks for watching.